Right, so we have a database, we have a web server, and now let's create some models. Now the way we create models, I'm going to give you, actually I'm just going to go here, close all this, and let's go to the models section here. As I said, we use Sequelize, and Sequelize works with object relational models. Let's create a model called count, right? So inside this account, we just have to do module.exports. We have to export a function that will in turn receive a model object and the Sequelize instance. Now, what happens here is the SQL store is going to scan the models folder and is going to look for files that are JavaScript files. Now, if these files export a function, that means that those files are SQL models. Based on the model file name, it will actually initialize an empty model, giving it the name of the file. So if we just console log model object here, we're just going to see an empty, how an empty SQL store model works. So we know that the code here is the actual code of the model that we're going to use throughout the application. This is where it stands, the file. The table name by default is the actual code. And then we have no fields, no hooks, no static methods, no methods other than the default data method, no getters, setters, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go deep inside how the actual model and how you can extend it, because this is part of the actual Sequelize framework. So if you're interested in it, you can go to sequelizejs.com and just look over that documentation. But what I am going to show you is how we can actually define how our model is going to look like. So let's start with giving it a primary field, right? So just field of ID and say this is a primary field, and just give it a field called email, string of let's say 50 characters, field let's say first name, let's say 100 characters, and field last name of 100. At this point we have our first model, very simplistic model, and if we're going to call, if we're going to start the app normally, nothing's going to happen except that the SQL store is going to connect to the SQL server. That's pretty much it. But if we look back, if we look in the table, if you look into the database, it has no kind of, it doesn't have any kind of table because we haven't set up the actual store. Now, in order to set up any kind of component in Thorin, you just need to start the application with setup equals and then the component name. Now, components are stores, transports, plugins, and libraries, right? So we want to set up our store. So we just type store.sql, and then we're going to see here that the Thorin app is going to start up and setting up the database structure right there. We're going to see the actual queries that are executed. It essentially creates every table and just creates the table account, which the fields that it has, and also some default fields that it adds. For example, it adds, if you look at the structure, we have ID, which is a primary key, with auto increment, an email, which is varchar, first name, last name, and we have a created app. That created app is essentially a default field that all of your tables are going to have by default. You can remove them. You can add an updated that field. You can do essentially you can just model your models however you want. Now, if we're going to restart the server using exactly setup store.sql, it's going to be bad because it's just going to create everything. So we're just going to remove this setup part, just boot up the application normally, and we have an app that has a model account, right? Alright, so now that we have an account, how do we actually create a user? Now, if we go to the plugin here, called a plugin output password, which we're going to use. Let's go with. This is the actual options that the plugin requires to work. So first things first, we're just going to install it. Thorin plugin helloJS password. While it does that, we're going to go here and just add plugin require plugin helloJS password, right? And we're going to go inside our application configuration here and say plugin.oth password is going to have the following options. Now, if we look inside the plugin itself, we know that this is the model that it's actually going to be used as the account, as the user table. This is by default, we're going to use the SQL store. The identity field by default is user, which is type username, and the password field is called password with the little policy right there by default. Now, what we're going to do is in our settings, in our project settings here, we're just going to say that we're actually going to use the identity field. We want the identity field to be field. We want an email, right? Because our account has an email, and just add a type here. The default type is going to be email. That's pretty much it. Now let's go on and just set up the entire application again. You can just set up all the components just using setup equals all, and this in turns will just essentially reset the database. And as you can see here, the first thing that's executed is the SQL store will drop create a database, and then you see this plugin here, or helloJS password plugin, is going to set up its models. So basically, it's going to create the account table if it doesn't exist, and it's going to extend it. Now, if we look here into our database, we're going to see that this account here now has a password field, right? Because that password field was added by the plugin. That's what when I talked a bit about plugins, I said that plugins are parts of a Thorin application that extend bits and pieces of the outer application, right? So this plugin extends the account model with an additional password field and login at field, right? Alright, so going back here, in our to-do app, we just have a transport store and plugin, and now we need an account specific actions, right? So let's going back here, just where is it? Okay. Let's say I've just created an account action here, and just say, okay, dispatcher dot add action account dot register. This account dot register action is going to use a specific middleware authorization that was injected by the helloJS plugin. This is called actually this plugin injects a authorization called password.login, and this is for the password change. Here, password.change. We're not going to use it right here because we want to register. Instead, we're going to say we need some kind of input. So we need email. We're going to tell the dispatcher to validate an email. And first name, dispatcher validate string. And then another last name, dispatcher validate string. Email first name, last name, and finally we need a password. validate string. Alright, so let's say, let's just check that everything works up until now. Const user data account data equals intent object dot input. So we have all this stuff here. Just console login. Okay, just restart server without setup. And go back here, and instead of sending the type home.landing, we're going to say account.register, if I remember correctly. Yes. And let's see here, we're missing a few fields, so we're just going to start with first name, John, last name, Doe, email, John. Let's see what happens here. The thing is that the email validator here that we have in the example validates that the email is actually an email. So you don't have to use any kind of hacky regexes or any kind of, I don't know, index of ampersand. You just use validate email, which in turn uses a specialized module that validates emails. So again, you don't reinvent the wheel, you just use the wheel. Going back here, we're just going to say john@go.com. It's a valid email, but we still need a password, right? So just add here a password. It's not a good thing, but still. Right, now, if we look here, we have all the data validated, because if we send out here at the email another space, it's not a valid email. But if we send out com with upper cases, it's going to convert it into lowercase. So when you have a database of users and you say, okay, you want to say this email is taken, if your emails are uppercase and lowercase and all these cases, you cannot check, or you can just check at the engine, at the SQL engine for uniqueness, but Thorin actually does this for you, so all the emails are lowercase because it doesn't make sense to have a uppercase and lowercase inside your email, because essentially it should be case insensitive. Alright, so now that we have this payload set up, we're just going to go here and look inside the auto password plugin here. We have a check policy function that is executed, and just going to use that. Now the way we are going to access the plugin, just say here auth plugin thorin.plugin auth password. Alright, so the function here, thorin.plugin, returns me the plugin that's called auth password. So this is one of the issues that we had with our previous framework is we only registered this kind of accessors like plugins and stores and all that only inside routes. So with Thorin you can just access any kind of plugin from anywhere. Plugin stores or transports or even libraries. So now that we have a plugin, auth plugin reference here, we can just say, okay, we know that we want to check out if the policy of the password is good. So let's say if not auth plugin dot check policy of account data.password, return next, Thorin error, invalid password, please enter a more stronger password. Start here and see if the password validator is good. Please enter a stronger password. Now, because if you look inside the default policy here, the default policy is that you have a minimum of 8 characters with, and that's pretty much it. So password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's see if it works. It doesn't, so it probably doesn't want password as a password. Let's see here. Check equals. Let's see what the actual policy checker returns. It might slip my mind. about the actual result that the plugin returns. So yes, it returns undefined. That is because, let's see here, in our policy checker, if we don't have any kind of policy password, then we just, okay, so this, I use this in quite a lot of, it's been quite a while since I would use this module, so unfortunately I'm just going to have to comment this out.
Isn't it password.check policy?
Where? In this plugin here we have password policy as an object, and our plugin
Check equals, go back to the other file.
yes, check.
Check policy, isn't it? Not password, check policy. I don't know.
Let's see again. No, because it might be some kind of mistake that I've done in this code, but for the sake of this example, let's just check this out and we'll come back to it later, maybe. Looking into this module here, we have a hash password function, which is essentially asynchronous. So let's say LTH plugin.hashPassword, counted a password, and then we know that it is a actual, it returns a promise, right? Yes, it does return a promise. Yes. Alright, so another, I want to show you a small feature that Thorin has is the way we can chain promises with async style chaining. So let's see here, we have a calls function array here, and then we just calls .push, just push a function inside that calls and just return this, and then do this. Then the password equals hashed. Alright, and we just console log this here. And then just use this utility function called Thorin.series calls, and then we have the callback. Now, if E return next to E, console log OK. And just next. Now let me explain a bit about what's happening here. We declare a simple array called calls, and inside that array we just push a function that will return an actual promise, right? And this function will not return anything, and the way this works is when you call Thorin.series with an array, that array is going to be called in an async style. So you have async.series, if you work with it, you have async.series, and async.series works with callbacks instead of promises. Now this works with promises, and the main idea is that if the first promise gets rejected, the second one is not going to be called. And essentially this is where the first error is going to be received. So we're going to see a bit later about how this can affect our code quality and visibility.